As a company, we're really, really obsessed with customer outcomes. So if I can do something without using agents, I will. Ultimately, all that matters is are our customers getting the results that they're hiring our digital workers for?
Prabhav, thanks for being here, man.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
All right, so maybe we'll start this with maybe a high-level question. A lot of people talk about agentic experiences today. You know, it's really good marketing, but maybe I'd like to just take a step back and start by asking, what does an agentic product mean to you?
Totally. And this is a great question. I think the term agents and sort of agentic experiences is thrown around a ton. If you're using LLMs at any level, you're now an agent company, which means like every company out there is an agent company. But for us, like agents really have to plan, reason, reflect, think, get better over time. Like to me, that is the definition of a true agent. And the agent problems that really sort of interest me are the ones where the answer like isn't clear. Like there isn't a right answer. Even a human wouldn't have the right answer. Like what makes a piece of writing good?
Yeah.
Right? That's really hard to quantify. That's what really excites me about agents. The user interface and the user experience really, really matters. Over the last 25 years, we have been trained to understand like web and mobile interfaces.
Yeah.
And now you have these agents coming up which aren't like deterministic. They change what they output every time you sort of call them. And that's like a very new thing that we have to kind of train and explain to prospective customers that like, hey, this thing doesn't quite always work the same way. So it's like a really interesting concept that's come up with agents now.
Yeah, it's interesting, like not always working the same way. I guess the thing that I'm always tied to is like what is effectiveness? And so how do you think about these agentic products that you're building or maybe you've seen? Are they more effective than humans? Or is it really just like, hey, is this orchestration and we're just making rules and trying to build different experiences?
You know, what I've seen is that, especially in like code generation, I sort of count that as like true agentic companies because not only can they like generate code, like, plan what they're going to write, then generate the code, then run it, see errors that come up and then keep going, right? And I think that part of the ecosystem is quite mature now. I think for like B2B, like verticalized agentic applications, it's quite a bit more complex, right? Again, you can like run code and see if it like runs. Right. Yeah. But for these applications, they're much more complex.
Maybe say a little bit more about that. What makes these B2B applications more complicated and harder to solve for?
There's a lot of people involved, right? So for us, for example, we sell to go-to-market teams. What makes good content? What makes the lead that you're reaching out to like a true ICP lead for you? Again, it's just kind of subjective.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what makes it trickier. Whereas, for a piece of code, it kind of runs and does what you tell it to do.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think this might be a good time to segue into talking a little bit more about like the 11x's products, because that might give us a backdrop to talk about more of these experiences. So maybe give us a little bit of a sense of what 11x is built today.
So, at 11x, we're really building digital workers for revenue teams. And we like to think that our digital workers deliver human results. And so, whether it's sales, RevOps, marketing, we kind of want to focus on these as our main customers. We have two products in the market today, which is pretty rare for a company of our, like, I guess, earliness to have two products. But our first product is called Alice. Alice is our AI SDR. She can engage prospects across multiple channels. She can drive qualified meetings. She can drive pipeline. And Alice does this today by working with data that's in the first-party data that's in your CRM. Alice can leverage our extensive data warehouse of third-party data. Alice can target visitors coming to your website. And so the goal here is to make it dead simple for go-to-market teams to run these like campaigns on autopilot. And under the hood, there's a lot of complexity. We're kind of abstracting away from the end customer. How do you find the right lead? How do you do extensive, deep research on both the lead and the company they're at? How do you scale the actual outreach across a bunch of channels? How do you make it super personalized? How do you make sure it converts? And to our customers, they don't see any of that complexity, right? Because that's kind of our job when we're building these companies, when we're building this agentic company. Mike is our second product. It's doing a lot of the same things that Alice is doing, but through the channel of voice. So it's our voice agent. We've focused Mike and designed it for sort of inbound and consented outbound use cases. Mike can operate across a bunch of languages 24/7. It integrates deeply with our customers' workflows, so with their CRM, with their calendaring software. And it's really designed to superpower and supercharge their teams.
And if we just step back to that first question for a second and think about a spectrum of fully agentic to fully orchestrated and maybe rules-based is maybe the opposite of agentic. Like, where do these products live today? And how do you think about where those products should be?
Yes. I think as a company, we're really, really obsessed with customer outcomes. So if I can do something without using agents, I will.
Yeah.
Right. Ultimately, all that matters is are our customers getting the results that they're hiring our digital workers for? And so what we tend to do is we tend to break down our agents into a set of tasks. Some of these tasks are agentic, some of these tasks are not agentic. The key metric we always look at is like, for this task, what is the best technology that's going to get the best outcomes? And so we're like sort of very purist about that. And so, if you look at sort of our agents, some part is just a complex orchestration, which is, a complex problem in itself. The other parts are actually agentic. So for example, when we like write content, that's agentic, right? When we do deep research, that's agentic. But when we are, sending out an email on behalf of a customer, just normal stuff.
Do what works.
Do what works, exactly.
No, and if you think about like the market, things have changed so fast over the last 12 months. Maybe walk us through the evolution of your two products in the 11x platform over that time period and the decisions that you've made to come from there to now.
Yep, totally. In 2022, like GPT kind of took the world by storm. It's like, wow, this thing can actually produce some pretty cool stuff. Our main use case at the time was like, hey, can we help our customer generate these emails, generate this content? And we're using basic prompting, just like sort of every company out there. In the last, I would say like 8 months, like the world has completely changed. Now you have like agents, agent frameworks, like monitoring, evaluation, like multimodal models, reasoning models. Like basically the entire game has changed. I wouldn't say that took us by surprise, but like just how quickly we had to move to keep up with the innovation was something that's a bit surprising. Ultimately, like we're like I mentioned, we're like very customer oriented. So we're like, okay, these like 3 new models came out this week. We have to ship all these other features. Like, how do we balance both? And that was a tough problem because maybe one of the models that came out was like going to increase ROI by 20%. Right. And then it's important for us to sort of test that. So we had to get into this muscle of like very quickly testing things while also keeping, our goals are focused on North Star for our customers, which is outcomes. For our second product, it's a voice-based product. That I would say in the last 6 months, we've seen the most development in, right? It's a completely new set of challenges, right? Like how do you handle background noise? How do you handle turn taking? How do you handle latency? How do you make the speech sound natural? There's all these things that we do as humans. It's actually quite hard for sort of agents to understand. I mean, even something as simple as talking through like your AirPods. The speech that you actually get back on the other side is very different from if you like just pick up your phone and talk to it. Right. And so there's all these things that, we hadn't quite anticipated until we started building sort of our voice agents. And I would say in the very early days, people were like, okay, I want to build a voice agent. I'm going to start off with something that takes speech and converts it to text. Right. Then I'm going to take that text and like throw it into like GPT-4o or like a Llama model or a Claude model, right? And then at the end of it, I'm going to take the text I get out and put it through some speech synthesis. And that was kind of like what everyone was trying to clobber together, trying to juice, 100 milliseconds of latency here, 100 milliseconds of latency here, try to make the experience supernatural. And I would say over the last probably like 2 months, we've seen a lot of advancements in voice-to-voice models or models that do both the speech to text and inference within the same model, within the same box, to make it much, much more natural. And so I think like we're kind of pushing the forefront of this right now with our agents. And one thing we've noticed is that for the agents that we sell, that we're sort of selling for our customers, you have to get 3 things right. One, it has to be intelligent, right? So if the end user says something, this agent has to be able to think on its feet. 2, the speech has to sound natural, right? And 3, it has to be quite accurate. And one thing we've seen is that for most companies building voice agents, they probably have to get like 2 or one of these 3 things right. We have to get all 3 right. Right. So it's more of a
you picked a hard problem.
Exactly. But the good thing is there's like no one's really competing in this space, which is nice.
No, totally. And if I think about the decisions in the platform shift that you guys have actually gone through to take advantage of a lot of this innovation, it's been a total whirlwind, right? I mean, I think you guys basically fully re-architected like almost everything. Maybe talk through a little bit about that decision to do the rebuild on initially the Alice product and then even on the Mike product. Why did you decide to do that? And then talk a little bit about how you structured the team and actually made this happen while also scaling really fast.
Totally. I mean, this was hard. I won't lie. This was really, really hard. But ultimately, we realized that the new advancements that had come out would provide so much more value to customers. And if you always start from like, what can we do to deliver more outcomes for our customers? Like that is sort of our North Star. And like I said, we re-architected our entire product to be super agentic. And, we kind of had this thought exercise where we were like, okay, let's take our existing platform. Let's project out a couple months. Would that deliver more results or completely rebuilding and project that out 3 months? Right. And it was quite clear to us that would be a second approach. But at the same time, you have tons of customers on the first product who are actively using it, and you're trying to rebuild, get parity, re-architect, and migrate. It's quite hard. And so what we ended up doing was, we had the majority of our team working on the new product, and some small percentage of our team kind of like making sure the old product was working. Life support, handling customer issues, trying not to build new features, right? Because we'd rather build into a new product. I would say that's quite painful a couple months, but huge kudos to the 11x team. Like they sprinted. Right. And we got this out very, very quickly. I think faster than most people thought was like humanly possible. And so that was super exciting for us.
And I think that those trade-offs are like really interesting to think about. Like, okay, there's this product that you spent all this time on that has all these, wonderful little features for whatever customer set. And then there's this new thing that you're trying to build, which will be better. And so how did you think about like how to balance those trade-offs and even when to actually rip the Band-Aid and rebuild? Like, how did you think about those decisions?
It was really interesting. Like very early on when we were rebuilding the sort of the net new product, we like created this prototype, right? And then we showed it internally, we showed it to some prospective customers, and we were like, had so much confidence that this is going to be right.
Yeah.
For the first couple of months, were there going to be a lot of bugs? Of course. Were there going to be a lot of issues? Of course. But we knew that once we got past that hump, that this new product would generate a lot more value for our customers. It's really interesting. One of the things that we've started doing as a business, which no one in our space does, is during the sales process, we actually give our new product away like for free for them to use.
Wow.
We're like, hey, we believe so much in our product, like here you go.
Yeah.
Right? And no one else is doing that because most of their products out there require a lot of human support to actually get folks set up. But with this new product, we're like, boom, here's your login, go for it.
Yeah.
And so that also gives a lot of confidence that we're sort of moving in the right direction.
I love that. And we talked a little bit about that. We've touched on this rather of all the changes. You mentioned how many different model providers. There's the DeepSeek news, a month ago. How do you think about like testing and iterating as a part of this? And different providers get better or worse depending on new releases, and there's new models that are coming out. It feels like every month. How do you think about architecting the experience and then basically testing and like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis to understand how to build the right product?
I think the way we think about our agents is our agents perform a set of tasks. Some models are optimized for some tasks, some models are not. Sometimes it's not even agentic for one of those tasks. And I think we're sort of like, we don't have any like sacred cows internally. So we're sort of very open to trying out whatever is there that will be the most effective at that specific task. And that's what our customers are counting on us for, right? They want us to build the best agents that kind of achieve these outcomes. And so, whether it's like writing content or like tool calling or instruction following, each of these tasks are quite different per model. And we tried everything out there, right? And and because we tried everything, we sort of designed our tech stack to make so it's really easy for us to swap in and out models. But when you're swapping models like all the time, the things that you have to really get right is like, if you swap a model, is it actually better at scale? You can't just like run out a few examples like, oh, it looks good. Let's like roll it out for everyone, right? Which in some tasks, it's easy because there's an objective answer. In other tasks, like if I show you an email and say, hey, is this Joe, what do you think? Is this good? You might say it's great. I might say it's really bad. Right? It's so dependent on the use case. And that is, I think, a challenge that many people in the industry face. Like if there is no subjective answer, how do you know if it's good? And so that's where we have to have a bit of human in the loop, like, talk to our customers and make sure for their use case it's actually good.
Yeah, and on that use case point, that's kind of interesting because you have so many different customers. I don't know how many customers we have at this point. And they're using it in so many different ways. Like on those subjective questions, like, is there a process that you've built to try to think about, like, is this good? Is this better or worse rather?
Yeah. One thing we always try to convince our customers is, what they might consider good might not actually perform the best. And so we always try to convince our customers like, hey, let us run this on autopilot for a bit, just so you get some data. Because oftentimes, we would see some customers trying to take our system and make it write the exact same thing that the SDRs wrote. At that point, you should just use your SDRs, like why use our product, right? And oftentimes it's things that are unintuitive that work really well. And so for us, we have so much data on what performs across different segments, whether the email's open, clicked, where someone's replies, whether that results in a booked meeting. Maybe we send an email, the person visits your website, then to sign up for a demo. Like we have data on all of these things, right? And so now we can like sort of leverage that rich data back and be like, hey, this is what works. And it's kind of funny, like in the early days of Salesforce, people bought Salesforce to learn how Salesforce use Salesforce, right? And so part of what we have to sort of educate customers, like this is how use 11x to grow and accelerate our growth. This is how you should be doing it as well.
So it's interesting to think about Alice and Mike as like these combination of so many different tools and the model providers you just touched on. Like how many different products are even a part of Alice and Mike, and how do you stay on the cutting edge of all of those different infrastructure providers and the changing market and constantly testing and iterating? I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Totally. If you look at the modern like salesperson today, they use 20, 30 different tools as part of like their sales stack, right? And part of our product is consolidating all of those tools, all that complexity under the hood and abstracting that away from the customers. Like, hey, you're just focused on your end outcomes. And to do that, not only do we have to integrate a lot of vendors, but we also have to build a pretty seamless data warehouse system, whether it's third-party data or first-party data, just to give our customers a ton of insights into what's actually happening. And that's one part of our stack. Another part is just like, there's a ton of vendors we work with for things like crawling infrastructure or hosting on-prem models to have low latency. And the way we think about this is like, we really, really care about velocity, right? So if there's a vendor who's thought deeply about a problem and we can leverage their work and they can scale with us, we're very, very happy to use them. And internally, we've built this muscle where we can leverage a vendor, do an integration in days or sometimes hours, right? And that's really cool, good for us because now we can leverage this collective intelligence that sort of exists out there for companies that have gone really deep into a specific problem. Just use that for our use cases, and suddenly, our evals are just shooting up. And so that's been really cool to see. But at the same time, that means you're managing like a ton of integration under the hood. Our customers don't care if one of our providers goes down. They just care about their outcomes. And so we have to like build a lot of redundancy and stuff into place to make sure, and a lot of monitoring to make sure that they have a seamless experience, even though we're coordinating so many orchestrations under the hood.
Well, and it's interesting because some of these vendors, like if you're thinking about the SDR use case, some of these tools that the SDR use have been around forever. There's an established base of infrastructure providers for those tools. But then there's the stuff like web scraping that maybe is changing really fast, or all the different parts of the voice stack that are changing really fast. So how do you think about, like, this is a different type of testing and iterating and exploring. How do you think about those tools and how do you stay on the cutting edge? Because it's just incredible to me how the pace at which our team is exploring these.
Totally. It's really funny. I think if you went to like the last like YC demo day, you probably saw 11x as a customer for such a large percentage of those companies. I think, and part of the reason is because we're sort of in touch with all these companies. Like we're like, hey, this is a problem we have. Like if you build it for us, we'll use it, we'll pay you. Right. And so I think it creates like this ecosystem where people are like, hey, if I want to like get something tested, I want to go to 11x. And so we kind of have like this distributed army of folks, across building these cool things that we can leverage and be like, hey, this is good or this is bad for these reasons. And if they improve it, great, we'll use it. If they don't, then we won't. It's exhausting keeping up with all
fun,
of the
hopefully.
Yes, totally. But it's also really cool because all these teams are experimenting with different ways, like things that people hadn't tried before. And so we get to learn from them and see ultimately what delivers outcomes for our customers. And that's been exciting.
Another interesting aspect of this is we've grown so fast. Now we're building for scale, but we're also doing all of this testing and iterating. So how do you think about that problem of, hey, we now have a ton of customers that expect a really high level of service. We are taking over parts of the sales motion or the entire sales motion in some cases. So how do you think about the scale problem and building for scale versus exploring all these different tools?
That's a really tough question. And I think the short answer is you have to just do both, right? You can't just focus on one, right? Customers are expecting a bunch of new features. They're expecting the product to scale with them, right? And so the way we sort of thought about it for like R&D and product teams is like, hey, we will sort of think in themes on a weekly basis, right? Like on 1 week, we might be sort of talking through how we could accelerate some feature developments. Another week, we're like, okay, this part of our system is like crumbling. We need to make sure we can go and scale it. And so every week we kind of like try to make investments in both of these buckets. The amount of investment we make might change relatively week over week, but we kind of have to make progress on both because at the pace we're adding customers, like every part of the system is going to be like, oh crap, like we didn't think we'd get this much scale this quickly. So have to go and like spend time scaling that up.
Maybe as you've scaled, like, you keep adding customers, they're always asking for you to go in certain directions based on their business. And so how do you, on the one hand, listen to that demand, but also think about not letting that create product drift or scope drift on the product?
This is one of the things where we kind of have to stay true to our mission, right? We're trying to create these digital workers that deliver human results. Some feature requests move us away from these digital workers. They move us more towards traditional SaaS. And at some point we have to say, no, like we can't do that. But if our hypothesis is right, what we are building is enough of like a painkiller that customers will still stay, right? And that gives us good confidence if they're like, oh, can you build this like custom integration for us? And we're like, no. But here's all this other good stuff that you can use in our platform. And if they still stick around, that gives us good confidence. In general, it's really valuable to listen to the problems and pain points customers have and what their current solutions are. But if you were to just take their solutions at face value, our product would be like this behemoth of like 100 different custom sort of integrations. But we truly deeply listen to their problems and use that to kind of inform our roadmap because ultimately they have a problem. They're making buying decisions based on that problem. So we have to solve that problem. Just maybe not in the same way that they think it should be solved.
On that note, you guys went multi-product so early. I think that would probably be against the advice of many senior product leaders or people that have gone before. Why'd you make that decision and any learnings from that experience?
Like you mentioned, it was a very deliberate choice that we kind of made very early on. We knew that different sales strategies and motions work for different companies. For some, it's an outbound motion. For some, it's inbound. For some, it's phone calling. For some, it's email or SMS or another channel. We knew that different things work for different companies. And so we were like, how do we set up our company to be anti-fragile? We need to be able to support all these different motions. It's a very hard problem to do that quickly. Like, within a year, we had multiple products in the market, both, hitting pretty good scale. It was very difficult, but the way I think we sort of handled that is like we structured, like we would have really small pods working on the next like sort of 0 to 1 bet. And the entire goal of that pod is get to PMF. Like you are a startup. Imagine YCWA is coming up in a month. Get to PMF, right? And we've built a platform. And so we want folks to leverage a platform. But in some cases, again, the company isn't very old. We said just do what it takes to get to PMF. Like validate that what you are building is something customers actually want. Once you get there, then we can sort of put it into rest of machinery, design it for scale, all that good stuff. But in the beginning, anything you do that's not delivering customer value is a waste because you don't even know the product's going to work.
Yeah.
And so we're sort of very, very practical as a team where we're like, hey, we need to figure out how this works and then we'll invest in making it amazing. But first, just get the answers to those questions.
There's a long way to go still. There's so much still to build. But if you just pause for a moment and look back at all the decisions you made and all the product you've built, what would you have changed if you knew what you know now and could go back and tell yourself, back then?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. One of the things you asked me earlier about agents, and I was like, design really, really matters. I think we hired a designer too late. And I think that's one thing I think we would have changed if I could go back is like have them very, very involved like from day one of the process because it determines exactly how the user is experiencing your product. A lot of times that actually changes what we build. The actual experience the user has sort of under the hood. And so, one thing, and now we have, great designers on our team, but if you started with that, it probably accelerated our development quite a bit.
And maybe just to double click on that, like what are the design decisions maybe that you've now been able to make that you think you would have liked to have made earlier? I think it's just kind of interesting. Like it's so hard to sometimes like grok, like what is this agent doing that's kind of invisible? It's completing work. Like, are there ways that you've now, you feel good about how people see that work being done?
Yes. I think one good way is like taking the user along for the journey, right? So basically it's like, hey, what is our agent actually doing?
Yeah.
Like we would now, if you go to our product, like you can see our agent is like crawling these websites. It's like writing this research report and we showed that to you. So it's like the agent isn't just like doing something in the background and boom, here's some content. It's like here's step by step everything it's doing. And the design for that was really interesting, right? Because if you run that agent again, it might do slightly different things, right? But really taking the user along for that journey to be like, hey, this is what is happening at this step. This is what the agent is doing. It wrote this content because it found this information elsewhere. I think that really helps build trust with customers because otherwise they're like, why did you write that, right?
Exactly.
If I think of like a few other things that I think I would have changed. One is I think moving from London to SF earlier. This is like the mecca of AI agents.
There will be a lot of Londoners that are very unhappy hearing this, but I agree with you. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much development happening here, and like we learn so much from our peers, right? Everyone is facing similar problems, right? And the rate at which we can accelerate by kind of being in this mecca, having this collective intelligence across so many people trying so many different things has really sort of accelerated our development. So I think moving early would have accelerated our growth even more. I think the third thing is that I kind of alluded to this earlier, which is people, a lot of the reason people buy 11x is to learn how we sort of accelerate our growth using 11x. And so I think being more opinionated about how to use our product, exactly what people should be doing instead of like, here's a blank slate, go, right? I think that would have helped us set customer expectations and gotten them more success even earlier. It's like, hey, this is our opinionated view of how you should run a cold outbound or your warm outbound or your inbound phone calls or any of these things. I think would have really level set with the customer. Like this is what you should be doing and this is what success looks like. A lot of times customers are like, what does success look like? Am I comparing it just to my human SDR? But sometimes it's not an apples to apples comparison. What if I'm running like a brand campaign on 11x, right? And so really setting that from day one to be like, hey, this is what success is. This is how you use our product. And that's the direction that we're moving towards now.
This product is not straight up magic. It's like it is built for a certain type of use case. No, I think that's so right. Things are changing so quickly in the market and AI tooling's constantly, the whole landscape you just said, like it changed in the last 6 months for voice and it's like it's going to change that much more in the next 6 months. How do you think about the people that are best equipped to solve these problems? And like, how does that inform the type of team that you're trying to build at 11x? So maybe walk us through how you're thinking about hiring and talent.
I think at the IC level, one of the things we really look at is one, the ability to move fast, right? As you said, the landscape is changing so quickly, right? We have to be able to react to that very, very quickly. The second piece is really like, and this is regardless if it was an agent company or not, like ownership is really, really important, right? Ultimately, like, we have this like internal model, like we will die for our customers' pipeline, right? Like we will do whatever it takes to make them successful because we'll only be successful if our customers are successful, right? And so really having that deep, deep level of ownership for like, I will do whatever it takes to make our customers successful is something we really look for. And the third thing is like, it's a chaotic environment out there. You got to be able to handle chaos, right? We might change, a new model might come out, we might change a specific feature because of some new thing that has been unlocked. And so we have to be open to, you could have been working on something for like 2 weeks and it's like, actually, we're gonna throw that away.
Yeah, we're gonna kill that now.
Correct. And so I think not being like sort of married to the work you've done, but really staying focused on what will deliver more outcomes, I think is something that we really look for in folks. And I think like at the leadership level, it's a lot of the same things, but also like the ability to both have like vision and strategy, but also be able to go like heads down into execution mode. Because once you have like the vision and strategy, now you just gotta build it and execute. Right. And that is super important. So like for all of our leaders, they need to be able to go scale up and down like on a moment's notice. And that I think, and that's one of the reasons why we have so many former founders at 11x. Because they have had to do that so many times in the past.
This has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing all your learnings. We love working with 11x. I love working with you, and I look forward to many more fun things like this in the future.
Amazing. This is an amazing chat, and I'm really happy we were able to share some of the stuff that we've been doing.
Thanks, Prabhav.
Awesome. Thank you.